What impact do you think current and future crypto regulations will have on the investment landscape?
Yeah, firstly, just in general, for better or worse, the US is a jurisdiction that a lot of people look to in general, right? So whether the regulatory framework is something that ends up encouraging crypto in the US or discouraging crypto in the US, a lot of folks will react either with or against that, where some jurisdictions will say, okay, we're going to copy what the US is doing. Other people will
Mhm.
say, oh, we see where X, Y, and Z areas of that framework are not maybe in certain people's best interest. And that's how we can really, carve out a niche as a regulator that's really proactively providing more options to people, those sorts of things. The other part would be, I think there's also a lot of interesting things coming through the pipeline from a regulatory perspective in Europe and particularly in the EU and the UK, just from my personal opinion standpoint. And relatedly, that we also see where there's interrelation between different frameworks, where, for example, the British, for better or worse, colonized some giant part of the world, like around a third of the world, right? A lot of countries speak British legalese, right? And so then there's also a lot of reciprocity between them around what's going on between something like the U or let's say England specifically versus the Cayman Islands versus other spots. It's not always a one-to-one by any means, but there's a certain level of kind of understanding each other's dialect and being comfortable with it that can often happen. And yeah, I think beyond that, there's generally we're seeing two core areas where there's a lot of going to be a lot more traction from a regulatory standpoint. And one is the basically more of the emerging markets where there's honestly just more incentive to develop frameworks around emerging technologies. You see this with something like, say, the development of the cell phone ecosystem, where the US had one of the best landline systems in the world. And then they weren't in a huge hurry to develop a cellular network. And then there were other countries that ended up with more mobile adoption or better quality networks or both faster when they didn't
Mhm.
have landlines because it was of more value to them to invest in that technology. So I see that happening where emerging markets will start leading the charge on some of this regulation. And then the other is some of these smaller nation states around the world, ranging from the Middle East to Europe to the Caribbean to East and Southeast Asia, where there's just things can happen faster, essentially, and enact more regulatory progress at a much more significant speed than some of these kind of large countries. Those are some of the things that I think through in terms of where we can provide the most value and also what are the opportunities as well as the risks to be considering.